What convinced you when you were reading it? What was in the Quran that made you think that, yes, this is the truth?
So, whilst reading the Quran, I started to look at podcasts. One was by our good friend Jules Sullivan, the sartorial shooter. And I'd always seen Islam as something very cultural. And the people who were Muslims would always wear thobes and have long beards. And it's true, but I'd associate it with something that's just not part of my culture. So I never really thought about it. But looking into Jules' podcasts and then a few other people's podcasts, I realized that anyone can be a Muslim. There's no restrictions on how you look, what you need to be like, your culture, anything. You can just be a Muslim. And that helped me a lot. And then in the Quran as well, it was reading that it was the amount of times I'd read a passage and be like, oh, I agree with that. And then read another passage, oh, I agree with that. And I suddenly realized that the religion that I'd sort of stayed away from my whole life was just something that I completely agreed with, time and time and time again. And the more I read as well, it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't a book that was like overly religious. It was more a way of life. So when it talked about marriage and how to find a partner in life, it did it in a way that I agree with. Especially living in the UK and being, someone who was fairly young, I saw the culture around me where women were getting used left, right, and centre, and men thought they were getting the best side of the deal, and women thought they were getting the best side of the deal. But at the end of the day, both sides were just being used, and it was just horrible. And then seeing in the Quran the exact way that I wished relationships worked, like going straight for marriage and knowing people through recommendations in like the halal way, was how I already thought marriage should work. And then a few more things I learned about inheritance and the laws in Islam, and I started to realize that it's just stuff that I agree with. I just agreed with everything. And then by the end, I just ended up taking my shahada because I was like, this is just exactly what I believe already, basically.